It is the second Sunday of the month, so that means it is time for the flea market. The plum blossoms are out, which is actually very beautiful. Sometimes people mistake these for cherry. However, the plum, or ume, actually blossoms earlier. Alright. Oh, it looks busy today. Let's head over. See if we can find anything good. I don't really have anything specific in mind. Oh, not as many tents to this time. This isn't as big for me as... So before I started using Yahoo Auctions, this monthly antique market was where I picked up most of my coins and stuff. But that's changed a bit now that I use Yahoo Auctions. But there's still a set I'm trying to complete. Let's take a quick tour of the antique market. As you can see, it sells a little bit of everything. You see homecraft goods, you see art, you see old tools, you see old guns and swords, you see modern swords that are not swords because of the metal they're made out of. I'm not quite sure what the rules are. And of course, my favorite, coins. Let's talk about what I got at the antiques market. So I'm going to start with this one. I really like this one. In fact, I looked at it last month and I hemmed and hawed and should I? Need to put it into a new flip. So this is a 1937 1 crown from Australia. Now, what this coin is commemorating is it's commemorating King George the VI, right here. This guy is this handsome dude. King George the VI. So, King George the VI was just coronated. He became king. It's good to be the king. So they made this special crown to commemorate the fact that he's king. In fact, you can see here, King George the VI, by the grace of God, King of Britain, King of all British territories, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. And it was in Latin and they shortened it, but we all know the idea. It's actually got a really nice design. So they ended up producing this coin in 1937. It was intended to be a circulating commemorative. I don't know why, and on a quick internet search, I never found a reason. They again reissued it in 1938 in smaller numbers. I don't know if they suddenly realized, hey, we need more crowns, or what. So in 1937, this year, they issued slightly over 1 million. 1938, they issued slightly over 100,000. The 1938s are more valuable because they're rare, and it's just kind of an odd story about why did they do that. As far as the coin itself, it's 26 grams of silver in there. It's sterling silver, so 92.5%. 26 grams of silver, so about 0.84 troy ounces. And just kind of cool commemorative. Not something you see every day. Our next one is very run-of-the-mill. In fact, it's interesting because it's so run-of-the-mill. So here we have a 1964 U.S. quarter. This was the last year that the U.S. put silver in their circulating quarters. It was 90% silver, which was pretty standard in most U.S. coins. Now, here's the interesting part, or maybe it's interesting because it's so normal. Here, focus. So, right above $quarter, below the eagle's feet, you can see a D, a little D. So that's called a mint mark. It tells you where it was minted. In the United States, D means Denver Mint. So this was produced at the Denver Mint in 1964. And what was happening is as this was the last year that the U.S. was putting silver in its circulating coinage, most countries, if they hadn't dropped silver already, they dropped in the 60s. But the thing is that they still had leftover blanks, or I guess we could call them plachettes, the circular part that goes into the dies and so they had leftovers, which meant that they had to get rid of them all. And this is why for a lot of countries, the last year they produced silver coinage, they produce a lot of it because they got to get rid of it all. In fact, in the United States, some of them accidentally slipped into the 1965 quarters. And those are very valuable from a numismatic perspective because it's the wrong material. It's a very interesting error. Some of those sell at auction for thousands of dollars. Anyways, with all of this silver that they had to get rid of in 1964, that's when they produced most of the silver quarters. So the Denver Mint had the highest mint in 1964. This was the highest mintage of silver Washington quarters. I haven't checked, I haven't researched, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the highest mintage of any silver U.S. quarter. So in that year, they minted 704 million. In fact, they had so many to mint that some of them they minted in 1965, but they marked with 1964. So at 500 yen, that would be about, if you bought a whole dollar of these, it would be the equivalent of 18.8 times face value, about, which is, pretty good. All right. Here's the mailman. I wonder if that's the coins I ordered. So here is a coin from Bulgaria. This is 1 lev. This is actually a circulating commemorative, commemorating 25 years of socialist. Oh, there's something I ordered. Maybe it's the coins. Maybe it's my wife's earrings. Who knows? All right, so this was made out of a nickel and brass combination. You can see 1 lev, People's Republic of Bulgaria. Yeah, pretty neat. So 25th anniversary of socialist rule. I wonder if those are coins or earrings.
No.
No? Something else my wife ordered?
No. This is free. Look that. I did not pay.
Okay. You can also pay earlier at 7-Eleven, but okay. So, this is just kind of a fun little thing. I picked it up just because I liked the look of it and it was cheap. You can see, I guess they're soldiers. You can see on the left side, 1944. On the right side, 1969. So here we have an interesting one. So this is from 1934, and it's 1 chol from Manchuria. Now, at the time, Manchuria had a puppet government set up by the Japanese Empire, and it was led by Puyi, who had been the last emperor of China. He had been a kid as emperor, and actually, he didn't know the empire collapsed and that it was now the Republic of China until afterwards. Nobody bothered to tell him because he was a little kid. And basically, as part of the agreement, he got to stay in the palace with many of the other members of the royal court, and they basically kind of continued their secluded existence for a long time. There's a pretty good movie about him that I've never actually seen, but lots of people tell me is really good. Anyways, so later, he ends up joining up with the Japanese in creating this, basically a puppet state in northern China. It was basically an attempt to legitimize their invasion of northern China. Now, that was in 1932 when Manchoukuo was formed. This is 1934. It's 1 Chiao, but look at the date. It says year 1. But it started 2 years ago. What was going on? So, in 1932, when Puyi first came to Manchuria for the Manchoukuo government, Puyi was the chief executive. He did not have a title of being emperor or royalty. He was the chief executive. Now, in 1934, there was this decision that to install him as the emperor, and so they became the Emperor of Machuria, and Puyi became the emperor. So they did a coronation ceremony. They did all this. I think this was his 3rd time being crowned Emperor of China. And to some extent, this was, a justification of, hey, we're supporting this rightful government of China. There were, there were lots of governments in China. you know, this was the warlord period had gone on for a long time. There were different factions, all claiming to be the rightful government, and now Japan had one too. So this meant, since there was a new government, they had to start a new calendar. So now that he was emperor, they went to the Kade calendar right here, and so they started over at 1. Now, if we look at the coin, we can see that this kind of looks like the Queen China flag. You have the pearl in the middle, and you have the dragon reaching for it. And then on this side, we have a lotus. So, pretty neat coin. I think it's the first one I have from Manchoukuo. They also did lots of paper bills, but those are generally pretty expensive, even if they are pretty cool. Our next one, this comes from Edo Period Japan. This is 1 shu. It's made out of silver. It is actually pretty early on, so it's not as debased as some others. I believe in another month I showed a video of one I got that was more debased. So this one would be 0.968, maybe. That's what they were kind of supposed to be running around in this time period. But there's no guarantee. It does look more pure than some of the other newer examples I found. So basically, the Tokugawa shogunate was really, really, really into debasement. This wasn't, in some governments, it becomes something that you see during a crisis period. For the Tokugawa government, it was just standard practice. They were doing this since the beginning. They would start with 1 purity, and then they would lower it, lower it, lower it, lower it, lower it, as time went on. Some of it was just, you know, for a long time, there was nobody else issuing currency inside Japan. There was actually a big way for the Tokugawa government to make money. Their other big thing was seigniorage. So seigniorage is when you produce money. Maybe you produce, well, let's say you produce 100. I'm going to use a decimal system and not a fractional system. So let's say you produce something that's worth 100, but it only costs you 70 to make. Seigniorage is that difference. And by increasing debasement, they were able to get more seigniorage. That's also why, unfortunately, I lost the video, but they had a major interest in Asho. So Asho is where a lot of copper was produced, and they made quite a few copper coins. And so for that reason, the Tokugawa shogunate had major interest in controlling Asho and the copper production. That's not to say that other groups did not produce coins. They weren't supposed to, but generally the further you were away from the center of power, the more liberties you could take. The Satsuma being an example. Part of the reason the Satsuma were so significant and powerful is they were far from the shogun. So they had a lot more leeway to do what they want. So this is basically a good example of a 1 shu before debasement hit. 1 shu, and then silver. Just tells you what it is. Oh, on this side, there's a stamp mark. It's basically a guarantee. Ginza, jin being silver, the mint, so silver mint, and then jozi, which would be like, I don't know, like an official, like a mint official, or like a head of finance, Department of Finance. All right, kind of cool one. Go with the rest of my samurai money. Next one, 50 sen. Now, that's a really cheap price on one of these. So this is from 1960, so Tasho 5. It's a 50 sen. So these are 80% silver. Generally, you sometimes find these in junk coin lots, junk silver lots in Japan, but not that much. Most of the 80% stuff, just because it's older, quite a bit of it is numismatic. You don't find it in junk silver lots as much. This one being exception. I have a few ones that I picked up that were in junk lots. pretty nice. As far as this coin itself, 80% silver. It would be a little bit smaller than the previous one. So at this time, instead of lowering the purity, the government basically engaged in debasement by making the coins lighter and smaller. So that was their trick back then. So instead of, oh, now it's 72%, instead it's like, oh, now it's a few grams lighter. Save them a little bit of money. Save them a little bit of silver. As far as this coin, 1916, they minted 8.7 million, or a little more in that year. This is kind of a good example of a 50 cent for junk prices. Usually the junk ones are much more damaged than this. So yeah, this actually is a pretty nice one for the junk bin. Now for the last thing I bought, and this was to finish a typeset. So what this is it is a half sen. Yeah, let's flip it around. Oh, upside down, my bad, I'm sorry. So here's a half sen. So this would be from 1886. So this would be Meiji 19. So the sen is 1/100th of a yen. The half of a sen would then be, well, you would need 200 of them to make a yen. In fact, which side does it say that? It literally says that right up at the top. 200 to make, oh man. The problem with copper coins, they're hard to focus. Yep. So you need 200 of these to make 1 yen. Literally tells you that in case you're challenged with math. I'm actually surprised if the penny doesn't say, oh, 100 of these make $1. That might actually help some people. Okay, so this is the half sen. They made a lot of them. So in 1886, they made 31.8 million of them. So it was made from 1873 to 1892. So it had a pretty long run, Meiji 6 to Meiji 25. It's also the equivalent of 5 rin, which we'll talk about later. 10 rin to a sen, yeah. So basically 1,000 rin to a yen. I don't know why it's half a sen and not 5 rin. I'm not sure why they made this choice. It might, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. It's just kind of an odd choice to me. I don't understand why, but that kind of makes it interesting. So what this is part of is the typeset of all the sub 1 sen coins. So last month I finished my 1 sen typeset and posted about it, found the last few coins at the antiques fair. This is now a complete set of the under 1 sen. Like a lot of Meiji coins, it has the dragon there. But part of the problem is oftentimes the details on the dragon get very worn. So it can be hard to see it's a dragon. You can see his whisker kind of there in the middle, pointed down at the 2. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the rest of this set. So first we have this 1886 half sen that I picked up. This is the last one I needed. This is actually a pretty short typeset. Next one is the 1 rin. So the rin is 1/1000th of a yen. So this is technically 5 rin. This coin was made in Meiji 7. So that would be 1874. They made these from 1873 to 1884. So Meiji 6 to Meiji 17. Since switching to the yen, this is the smallest coin as far as value that has been produced in Japan. They also made them in 1892 for the World's Columbia Expo in Chicago. So that would be Meiji 25. The expo was in 1893, the next year. So they made coins for that too. It's not one of those. It's just tiny. Its value is tiny. Its worth is tiny. It's less than this. It's 1/10 of a sen. It's going to take 1,000 of these to make 1 yen. Why did they denominate this as half sen? I don't know. Fortunately, I didn't pay full price for that. Now, the next one is the 1917, so Tasho 6, 5 rin. So these two, this is technically half a sen. This is technically 5 rin. These two have the same value. They never made more rin after that. So, yeah. So this is Tasho 6. This is half of a sen. You could think of it that way. Or you could think of it as being 5 rin. Either way. They no longer did the dragon design. They have the leaf cluster. I don't know. The dragon's kind of classic, but I understand why they dropped it. So this was the last sub-sen coin produced. Inflation, that's really what gets you. It's what's made the penny unviable in Canada, and is quickly making the penny unviable in the United States, or the 1 yen here in Japan. Inflation is just eating away at the value of them, so they dropped it. They dropped the rin. Now it's more of a theoretical accounting number that nobody actually uses. There used to, in Taiwan, there used to be the $half coins, which were really only useful for stamps, as they were the only thing that had that type of value. That's just kind of the way coins go. Inflation makes some of them kind of useless. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this little peek into the antiques market and what I got there. So why don't you go down to the comments, tell me your favorite coin that I picked up this time, or maybe what you think of this set. So like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you in the next one.